Bishops and knights are not equal. Clearly, some pieces such as the rook and queen should be valued more because they have a greater mobility and attacking power. But why are the bishop and the knight valued equally according to the standard set of values at only 3 points? These pieces do not move similarly at all. While the bishop moves in diagonals, the knight moves in Ls. Depending on your playstyle being tactical or positional, you might prefer one over the other. But according to Stockfish and famous past world champion Bobby Fischer, they prefer the bishop over the knight in many cases, stating that a bishop should be worth up to 3.5 points. Let's try and objectively judge the style of each piece. Bishops often pin other pieces to the king, winning material, such as in the fried liver opening. Knights can fork pieces to win material because it has a unique way of movement. Now think about how many squares each piece controls. A bishop can move much faster from one side of the board to another, but it can only control half the squares because of its color. A knight, however, can go anywhere on the board because it alternates between light and dark squares, even though it takes longer to get there. Tactically, I find the knights better because they can easily cause board vision blindness for my opponent. The bishop pair may be a phrase that you're familiar with. People who say bishop pair advantage believe that the two bishops are better than any other combination of minor piece, because with two bishops you can control both light and dark squares very easily. This may feel correct in practice, but often it's very hard to prove an advantage because the opponent might simply try and trade off one of your bishops. Now I'll show you why the knight is a better piece most of the time. Consider a closed position, where there are many pawns that clog up the board. Material is even, but would you rather play white or black in this position? Clearly, black is winning because the knight is far more superior to the white bishop, because it's putting pressure on many pawns while the bishop is stuck behind the pawns defending. This scenario, the good knight versus bad bishop, often occurs in many French and Caro-Kann games, and it can be the cause of a loss because the bishop is no more than a glorified pawn. Even in an open position, knights compare relatively well to a bishop. A bishop versus knight middle game or endgame is always balanced if played well. For example, a bishop may be fianchettoed, which is part of many Sicilian openings, modern defenses, or the King's Indian defense. But a knight can simply block that diagonal, negating the power of the bishop. Outposts are even better for knights than bishops. Sitting in the middle of the board, this outpost cannot be challenged by any piece, and the only way to get rid of the knight is to sacrifice a rook. Even that is not easy because the knight can simply jump around and avoid getting captured. A bishop outpost or a wooden shield is also extremely strong, but slightly less powerful to the knight. Now, arguably the most beautiful checkmate, the smothered mate, is delivered by a knight. There's no denying the satisfaction of winning down an entire queen and its completely humbling effect it can have on your opponent. With the one last example, let's take a look at a famous chess study by Richard Reddy which showcases the domination of the knight over the bishop. White's option to push the pawn or moving the knight ends in a draw after the king catches the pawn. Surprisingly, the only winning move is king to h1, putting black in zugzwang. The king cannot move, or we can promote the pawn. The bishop also cannot move anywhere because the knight will fork the king and bishop. Overall, while many top players believe that the bishops are better, I think knights are the underrated pieces for sure. Comment down below what you believe to be the best minor piece.